Test, test. Okay.
Thank you, Danielle. That was lovely. Buenos dias y bienvenidos. Good morning and welcome to this service of worship at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Tucson My name is Celeste Rogers, and I am the worship associate this morning. I'm joined today by Helen O'Brien. Today is Sunday, June 7th, 2026. Happy Pride Month, everyone. Our community is striving to become as varied as the blooms of the Sonoran Desert. Whoever you have been, we welcome you. Whoever you are, we welcome you. And whoever you are becoming, we welcome you and invite you to bring your whole self here now. Reverend Jamili is away from the pulpit this morning. She will return next Sunday. Our guest speaker this morning is Helen O'Brien, an anthropologist and practicing archaeologist in Tucson and Pima County for the last 40 years, and a longtime member of UUCT. Please let's give her a warm welcome. Now some housekeeping details because we do care about your comfort and safety. There are gender-specific bathrooms out the glass doors behind you, and there's also an accessible and gender-inclusive single-stall bathroom in the AV alcove. On Sunday mornings only, the sanctuary, the social hall, our parking lots, and our children's classrooms are open to all without invitation. In contrast, we have designated a number of other areas as private, even on Sunday mornings. Private offices are labeled as such, and entry to those spaces is by invitation only. To all of you, please consider yourself invited. This invitation, however, is not extended to any law enforcement officers, including ICE. They may not enter these private spaces unless they have a properly signed judicial warrant. If you do not feel safe and need to take advantage of these spaces, please do not hesitate to do so. As we worship today, let us always remain mindful of those desert people who came before to this place and whose land was stolen in ongoing acts of displacement and genocide. We honor the O'odham, the Yaqui, and the Apache. We also honor the Hohokam and the many other ancient indigenous peoples whose names are not known to us. We say these things because we refuse to whitewash the truth about our history. Healing begins when truth is spoken, accountability is embraced, and restoration is pursued. Reparations are one path towards that healing, inviting us to live our values by transforming acknowledgement into action and compassion into justice. As Unitarian Universalists, one of our core values is interdependence. We honor the interdependent web of all existence. We covenant to protect the earth and all beings from exploitation. We strive to create and nurture sustainable relationships of care and respect, mutuality and justice, and we work to repair harm and damaged relationships. As we move more deeply into the sacred space of worship, please know that we value you for what you bring to us today. As part of our commitment to advance UU's 8th principle to build a diverse and multicultural community, we value all of who you are. This very diversity and humanity which we celebrate continues to be under direct attack every day. It has become an act of radical love and defiance to proclaim that we welcome you. So when I say these words, please say after them, we welcome you. Whether you walked in, rolled, or skipped in, we welcome you. Wherever you are on your spiritual journey, we welcome you. Whatever cultural or ethnic background you claim, we welcome you. Whatever your immigration status, we welcome you. Whomever you love, however you identify your gender, and in whatever way you choose to express it, we welcome you. You are truly welcome here. We especially welcome any new visitors this morning. If you are new and feeling up to it, we invite you to raise your hand so that we can welcome you warmly. Now, I ask you to turn to someone sitting close to you, preferably someone whom you did not have breakfast with, and ask them this question, if they are willing to share. Were you born in Arizona? If they were, ask if one or both of their parents were born in Arizona. Okay. All right. Please raise your hand if your new buddy was born in Arizona. Anybody? Oh, okay. A few. Good. And if one or both of your buddy's parents were born in Arizona, raise your hand. Look around. Not many. All right.
It's supposed to stop. We are fortunate to live in a desert part of the United States where the border between the earlier inhabitants and the more recent arrivals is not hidden by trees and grass. In all parts of Greater Tucson, if you look at the ground, you can see the evidence of prior inhabitants. In fact, when I was talking to my daughter about this upcoming sermon, she mentioned to me that one of the times she was here for a sleepover, middle school, high school, she found a projectile point, an arrowhead, out by the trash dumpster. She did the right thing. She picked it up, she looked at it, she put it back where it belonged, and just never mentioned it to anybody at that time. As we just observed, we here at UUCT are a fairly transhuman bunch. That means we've moved around and ended up here in Tucson. That kind of movement is an inherently human thing. We as a species have been moving and migrating for at least 100,000 years purposefully that we know of, and really before that too. And it's certainly ongoing. But it can leave us with a dangerous lack of knowledge about the history that shaped the present circumstances of the place that we now call home. While the history of displacement and deliberate genocide in Greater Pima County is not as horrific as in many parts of the country, it is real, and it could lead us to believe that the earlier inhabitants are gone, that they have mysteriously disappeared. People do not disappear. There are three possibilities. One, they're still here. Two, they moved. Or three, they died. Knowing what happened in the past can give us a clearer idea of how to best move forward in the complicated present reality. We looked at a timeline of UUCT's past recently to understand why and how our congregation found itself where it is now. Today, we're going to look at some of what we know happened in the past in Greater Tucson and how our complicated present reality leads to hope as well as sadness. Come, let us worship together.
Got a little too hard here, but all right. If you have a chalice or candle at home, Please light it now as we light our chalice here in Holland. We light this chalice in acknowledgement that we are often unwitting accessories in the erasure of the history and prehistory of the peoples of Tucson, where we live and worship. Let this flame shed light into some of those dark corners and help illuminate our understanding of the descendant communities who are here. And now I've asked my friend Mary Catherine to help us with this song.
We're good. Okay. So the first song we're going to sing together today is De Colores. It's 3:05 in your book, but what I'm going to do is, okay. There we go. I'm going to say a line in Spanish, and you guys repeat it back to me, and then we will sing that verse all together. ¿Listos? De colores, de colores. Se visten los campos en la primavera. De colores, son los pajaritos que vienen de afuera. De colores, es el arco iris que vemos lucir. Y por eso los grandes amores de muchos colores me gustan a mí. Okay, now we're going to get some music to this. De colores se visten los campos en la primavera. De colores son los pajaritos de fuera. De colores en Tanaco y por eso los grandes amores de muchos colores me gustan a mí. Y por eso los grandes amores me gustan, colores gustan a mí. Oh, colors, colors, colores,
For the suffering of others and for so many other reasons, we set aside this moment together to remember, to honor, to hold dear the joys and sorrows in our lives. We symbolize our coming together with our shared bowl. With the large stones, we reach down to the stability and firmness of the earth, which has witnessed every migration and movement since it coalesced out of stardust, because we know that this strength can hold our global pains, joys, our loves and angers. With our small stones, we add our own personal celebrations and mournings. On a personal note, I am angry and horrified by the ongoing acts of displacement and genocide happening in Gaza, the West Bank, and now Lebanon, and the complicity of our own government in these atrocities, as well as the ongoing unjust, unnecessary, and illegal war the United States and Israel are waging against Iran. As people of conscience, we must continue to speak out against all human rights abuses. And on a lighter note, I was delighted to witness the premiere presentation of Reveille down in Green Valley last night. It was a wonderful show and a wonderful celebration of our very own Tucsonian Linda Ronstadt. Those who live in the desert know that water is a life-sustaining and scarce resource. As we pour into our shared bowl, let's remember the migrants who are walking through our desert right now without access to water. We honor those who leave water for anyone crossing our desert to find a better lives for themselves and our children. If you have a joy or sorrow to share, I invite you to go to menti.com and put in the code 41040553. Please include your name if you want to know who is sharing, if you want us to know who is sharing. If any of you here in the sanctuary wish some help with the Menti, Brian Moon is glad to assist you. If you are here in person, I invite you to come up to the table in front and create ripples of hope by putting a stone in the water to symbolize your joy or sorrow. We also have a table in the back of the sanctuary if you prefer to remain off camera. Please hold a time for quiet contemplation during this ritual. Those who wish to participate, please come forward now. And from our mentee, I just got my dream guitar. Yay! I just found out that my mom has a DNR. Feeling present right now, grateful for that, and a week that has allowed me to have the space to just breathe. Good for that. Just learned that my daughter-in-law's cancer has returned. Bob Gordon. We're so sorry to hear that. Prayers and good thoughts for our growing sanctuary. Michelle. Thank you.
Today's reading comes from the Tohono O'odham tribal chair on their website. Our origins are linked to our homeland, the Sonoran Desert. Thousands of years ago, our predecessors, the Hohokam, settled along the Salt, Gila, and Santa Cruz rivers. The Hohokam were master dwellers of the desert, creating sophisticated canal systems to irrigate their crops of cotton, tobacco, corns, beans, and squash. They built vast ball courts and huge ceremonial mounds and left behind the fine red-on-buff pottery and exquisite jewelry of stone, shell, and clay. Following our ancestral heritage, we became scientists of our environment. We used and continue to use meteorological principles to establish planting, harvesting, ceremonial cycles, and we developed complex water storage and delivery systems. We learned to make the best of our environment, migrating with the seasons from our homes in the valleys to our cooler mountain dwellings. On our oadag in the valleys near the washes that crisscrossed our land, we raised a tapestry of crops, including tepary beans, squash, melon, and sugarcane. We gathered wild plants such as saguaro fruit, cholla buds, and mesquite bean pods, and we hunted for the only meat that we needed from the plentiful wildlife, including deer, rabbit, and javelina. We continue this proud heritage today as 21st century Tohono O'odham.
Would you please respond with Nara Te Turbe? The words will be on the screen. We'll sing it in Spanish, then in English. It's a simple Taizé song, and many of you will know it because it's been in the tradition and sung here regularly for the last 20 years, but if you don't, you'll catch it, hopefully by the English. Nada te turbe, nada te espante, quien es Dios tiene, nada le falta, nada te turbe, nada te espante, solo Dios basta. Nothing can trouble, nothing can frighten. Those that seek God shall never go wanting. Nothing can trouble, nothing can frighten. God alone fills us.
So I'm going to make a brief apology before I even start. And that is that the things I'm going to touch very, very, very briefly on have had so many books, so many articles. So, right? So I'm going to just skip over the top. So those of you who know a lot about one or all of these things, that's just where we have to live. Otherwise, we'd be here all week. And I don't want to do that. And the other one is, I have a long time perspective, and that's just where I live, and I can't help it. And so that'll come through, no doubt. Okay, so archaeologists write their lists from the bottom up because that's how we find it when we dig, right? We start at the top, we end at the earlier time. It took me a while to figure that out. So not on the bottom because the slide got too full, but the first evidence of actual humans here in the Tucson area was about 10,000 years ago. Possibly earlier, in New Mexico, right, 30,000, we got it. Not in Tucson yet, we might one day. But the climate changed, the megafauna died off, things happened, more people. By 1300, in greater Tucson, right, the Tucson Basin, there were tens of thousands of people, right? There weren't a few tiny villages with 3 or 4 or 10 or 15. No, we're talking many major, we call them villages, but really they were bigger than that. They had hundreds of people, and they were spaced about a mile apart, up and down the rivers, all the rivers. So, lots of people. The Spanish entrada to this part of the Southwest happened at about 1539, 1540. In 1692, we had the founders. My list is longer on my paper, so I'm looking at the slide. 1692, the founding of the Mission Santa Vera del Bac. Now, that's not the building that's there now, but that was the mission that we heard about just a few weeks ago. There was a 1770s, there was the establishment of a presidio in Tucson. And Tucson was part, at that time, right, the Spanish came in, not with huge armies, but they sent some explorers first, few people. Priests came, they built missions up and down the Santa Cruz River. And so, and gradually more settlers, more Mexican settlers came. Tucson was part of Mexico until 1853 with the Gadsden Purchase, right? It was Mexico. First Spain, New Spain, and then Mexico. So then the U.S., Tucson became part of the U.S. 1874 was the establishment of the Papago Reservation, which is now named the Tohono O'odham Nation. 1880, the railroad came to Tucson. That was a big deal. It wasn't until Southern Pacific got here that Tucson sort of turned away from facing Mexico, which was the closest people and towns and, supplies and all that stuff, to looking toward the U.S. 1912, Arizona became a state, and last one of the lower 48. And in the 1950s, air conditioning became available, and that was when the population of Tucson exploded. So you don't have to memorize that. There's not going to be a test. That's just a framework to hang the other things that I'm really going to talk about onto, right? That's a timeline. And again, that's that archaeology problem. Okay, so next slide. So what kinds of things might we here at UUCT? We couldn't be here in this building here if the prior inhabitants were still here, right? So what kinds of things might we owe reparations for? Land, yeah, exactly. But things even more, and I'm going to talk about that too, right? Every week we mention acts of displacement and genocide, and I want to list several specific acts of displacement and genocide that have made it possible for us to be here now in this building. The first one is the arrival of the Europeans in the continent, right? This North and South America and Mesoamerica were pretty much cut off from the old world, Europe, Asia, Africa, until 1492. Not entirely, but pretty much. And what that means is when the very first European people arrived in the New World, they brought a whole suite of diseases. They brought smallpox, measles, typhus, influenza. Maybe was here before, maybe not, but certainly not the strains that they were bringing. Diphtheria. We just recently had an experience with a disease that none of us were at all, like our bodies were not familiar with. We had no antibodies to COVID, right? And it caused a pretty big disruption, right? A number of people who I know died. I don't know about you, but it certainly happened. Imagine that suite of diseases to a population that previously had no experience. Why do you think the Spanish were able to conquer Mexico and Peru? It wasn't the army, right? It was the disease. And further, and that's across North America. It wasn't necessarily purposeful, right? People on the boats had those things. They carried those germs. Sometimes it was purposeful. I'm not going to go in there. But mostly it was kind of inadvertent. Here's the problem with infectious diseases. They travel in front of the explorers. If everyone in your city or your village or your town becomes ill and dies, we know the Spanish documented 80% of the population in the Rio Grande died in the 1600s. Right? They wrote that down. Nobody was here writing things down at that time. But we can only believe that that happened here. And it happened across the continent and across the continents. That's a biggie, right? That's exceedingly. Imagine if 80% of our population died. Can you make a car? I can drive a car. Can I make a computer? Can I make an airplane? Can I grow enough food to eat without experts who do that? Maybe not. Okay, whew. So that is really the big one, right? That was way more people were killed by diseases than were ever killed by other humans, purposefully and deliberately with, chopping off their heads and shooting them and that kind of stuff. Next, here in Tucson. Here in Tucson, there were not a lot of super deliberate, big atrocities. But there's one that's pretty well known, and that's called the Camp Grant Massacre. Camp Grant was an army camp that's not too far from here, about 40 miles. It had a Apache settlement immediately right next to it. And the reason it was right next to the army base was because the army was providing food for the Apache who lived there, and they were in turn not raiding towns and villages. In 1871, A'atam, Mexican-American, and Anglo-Americans got worked up because there were some raids, not necessarily associated with this group, but they went to that town next to Camp Grant, and they killed about 100 people, almost all women, children, and elderly people, right? In between 1880 and 1910, right? So in 1871, that was pretty soon after the Anglos got here, and that is why they were the smaller number of people in the attack on the Fort Grant camp. By 1880, 1810, the railroad's here, water. Right? We live in the desert. There was not a canal that came from the Colorado River bringing us water, right? The only way to get water in Tucson to your house was to dig a well. And the Spanish farmers and ranchers who lived all up and down, at that time now lived all up and down the Santa Cruz River and the others, had a complicated system with a judicial water judge who set up whose turn it was to take the water on which day and for which fields and that kind of stuff. And they had a system and it worked. And it had worked for a couple hundred years. The Anglos who came to town didn't know that, and they didn't care. And so they redirected that water in many ways, and the final blow was a big sort of canal that was cut up north of Marana that just sucked the water from the Santa Cruz River. And the big deal was that it was at that point that the Santa Cruz River started to entrench deeply, right? I can't go on and on about hydrography, but I could, but I won't. But the Santa Cruz River has never run year-round, right? It's been a desert for a long time here, but the water was close to the surface. When it ran at the surface. Now, if you drive to the bridge and look down at where the river is, it's way down there. And the reason it's down there is because it's entrenched because of groundwater pumping, but also the sort of channels that were cut into the Santa Cruz that just sucked the water away. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Indian schools. You've heard about that, right? There was an Indian school in Tucson. I actually didn't even know that until I started doing some fairly serious research for this. I knew about the Indian school in Phoenix, right? They call it Indian School Road for a reason, and it was a big one. Native children were kidnapped from their families across the U.S. to be sent to Indian schools at a very young age, 5 to 6, put in dormitories. These were boarding schools. Their native languages were forbidden. Their hair was cut. And it was a deliberate attempt by the U.S. government to steal the culture of those children, to make them into Americans, which is odd, of course, because they were Americans. But the Phoenix Indian School didn't close until 1990. They were no longer kidnapping children at that time, right? But it was the school where, because many of the reservations didn't have high schools, people did want to have their children educated by 1990 so that they could manage in this world. But they did a pretty good job of erasing a lot of culture. Again, we're lucky to live in a desert, the people that were here. So the kids were a little bit harder to find sometimes. They would sometimes, if they heard that the BIA agents were coming, they would sort of often pick the oldest child to sort of sacrifice themselves so that the younger ones could stay home. Okay, next. The first public school in Tucson opened in 1867. The first tax-funded school opened in 1875 on property that was donated by businessman Esteban Ochoa. Instruction was bilingual, right? Because Tucson was still essentially a Mexican town. That didn't last too long. The crusading educators came in, who were, of course, not from Tucson, and in 1881, early on, Spanish was forbidden for instruction in Tucson, and often forbidden for children to speak, certainly in the classroom, but often also on the playground. That lack of instruction in Spanish lasted until about 1974. Now, I apologize. I have a pretty good time depth personally, but also from my professional thing. So 1974 does not sound like that long ago to me. For some of you, that's like, completely ancient history. I get it. But that's well within living memory. Well within living memory, right, of people who were in those schools and forbidden to speak Spanish and shamed for speaking Spanish. And then we were kind of getting over that, and Tucson Unified School District developed an outstanding Mexican-American Studies program. which was offered mostly at Tucson High, but in some other places in TUSD. It had a profound effect on the student body. And the Arizona legislators shut that down in 1912, or 2012. Okay, that's within almost everybody's living memory that's in this room, right? That was not that long ago. Okay, and then, 6 weeks ago, near the border, there are, and out across the desert, there are these astounding intaglios. What an intaglio is a sculpture, if you will. They're hard to describe. It's a geoglyph. What does that mean? In this part of the desert, the radiation, because of the kinds of stones and the intense solar radiation, right, the rocks turn black. And so if you move them, you can create designs. Think Nazca lines, right? We have them here in Arizona. We got a bunch of them out in the far western deserts. Not in Tucson, but farther out, right? This particular intaglio was about 272 feet long. That's about a football field, about a soccer field long, and then about 50 feet wide. Its head pointed toward the Sea of Cortez. This enormous fish, right? There were no fish, right? They're not fish in the western desert, although there is an oasis nearby there. And the border wall was clearly going to go through it. There were some discussions about whether they would go through it, or because they've waived all of the rules about, don't even talk to me about the archaeological sites and burials and that have been trashed. But this site was built by the ancestors of the A'atam. They still make pilgrimages, right? It's roughly 1,000 years old. It's a religious monument, right? Not unlike those that were exploded by the Taliban not that long ago. Anyway, a border contractor inadvertently, is what it said in the paper. Well, you can't inadvertently bulldoze, but perhaps it's not super, well, no, there was a fence around it. I'm sorry. There was a fence around it. It can't have been inadvertent. But they have now bulldozed through it, so it is not there anymore. Like, pieces are still there, but it's not there. It's gone. The Secretary of the Interior has apologized, which is, something, but not much. Okay, so enough atrocities. Right? We could go on and on. I won't. So why do we care? Why do we care? Most of this was in the past, and we collectively mostly just got here. We didn't do it. We didn't consciously perform these acts of genocide and displacement. We care because the past informs the present. We are here now living in the space that we live in because of the past. The past shapes our lives individually and collectively. We have pledged to be a people who believe in restorative justice. You cannot restore something that you do not know about, right? The first step of reparation is knowledge. We need to know what happened in the past to be able to act with justice in the present. Okay, so you'll be glad to know, so that is true. That is absolutely true. And informing ourselves about some of this history and prehistory is important. But you'll be glad to know that the previous inhabitants of Greater Tucson have not mysteriously disappeared. They're still here. The descendant communities are absolutely still here. There are 22 federally recognized tribes in Arizona. Together, their sovereign lands comprise about 27% of the area of the state, including a huge O'atam reservation. In Pima County, we have 10 districts of the Tohono O'atam Nation with 34,000 enrolled members, right? That's a lot of people. And portions of the Pasquayaki Reservation. And we have many other members of other tribes who have made their homes here in Tucson. Casinos are starting to bring in cash money to tribes. This is a good thing, right? Because it allows for services, education, and land purchases by Native communities. For example, the Tohono O'atam Nation has opened a community college in cells, right, at home. The Pasquayaki are purchasing lands, which are not yet technically part of the reservation, but they're buying property, both inside Tucson and out on the periphery. Okay, the Pima County Recorder here in Tucson is a member of the Tohono O'atam Nation, right? That's a good thing. And the Mexican families of Tucson, los Tucsonenses, and many of los descendientes del Presidio de Tucson are still here also, right? The Romeros, Garcias, Elias, Ronstadts, Ochoas, Leons, Morenos, Valencias, Valenzuelas, Santa Cruz, and Ruiz, and many, many more, right? You've heard their names in our local politics, as you should, right? So those descendant communities are here, and they are thriving in small and big ways, and we need to support that, right? We need to look for ways to support that, and we need to do that support in consultation. Thank you.
Well, our offering has already been collected, I guess. But this church is supported by the voluntary generosity of all who join with us. However you participate in today's service, our congregation depends upon you for your love, your time, and your financial support. For those of you here in person, well, the others have already been around. For those of you watching us from afar, you can send a check to our church office, give online at uuctucson.org/donate, or text 833-361-5796. We have been warmed by fires we did not build. We have drunk at wells we did not dig. Acknowledgement of our many blessings and our many needs. You may give your offering in whatever way you choose. Thank you. Who is our board member today?
Well, it happens that a child is in the foyer waiting to be sung in, so can we just bounce right to that? We are grateful for community, for gifts we share, and how we show our love and care. With thinking minds and helping hands, we'll build a place where love and hope expand. The one announcement that is pretty key is there's about to be a reception over here or a time for us to gather, and so I hope if you are new to us that you join us for some snacks in just a moment.
When Clay Sings by Bird Baylor, illustrated by Tom Bhakti. Dedicated to the ancient artists who created these designs and to the museums which preserve them. There are desert hillsides where ancient Indian pottery still lies, half buried in the sand, and lizards blink at other dusty lizards that were painted on those pots 1,000 years ago. Now, Indian children make a game of searching for bits of clay that were once somebody's bowl, or mug, or cooking pot, or dipper. Their parents look at what they find and tell them, remember, treat it with respect, it is so old. They say that every piece of clay is a piece of someone's life. They even say it has its own small voice and sings in its own way. So the children touch the pieces carefully as they kneel there in the hot, dry sand, listening for whatever voice a broken pot might use. A windy voice, a sandy voice, a voice like a far bird's cry. Sometimes, if they look long enough and if they are lucky enough, they can fit 4 or 5 pieces together the way you'd do a jigsaw puzzle. Then suddenly, they see a perky, wide-eyed bird look up at them, surprised. Maybe the bowl with the bird was dropped by some other Indian child who chased a rabbit near these same rocks then. When they find a bowl that isn't broken, the children can pretend that they've just eaten from it, and that they're sitting by some campfire on a deerskin blanket. And it's then, not now, and they speak an older language. They know the molding of a lump of clay has always been a slow and gentle work. No hurrying, no rushing. Hands that shape the earth this way have time to know the cool touch of the sand. Women then must have spoken to the earth as they took its clay. They must have sung special songs for shaping the bowl, for polishing it, for baking it, so it would be strong enough to last long after that tribe was gone. Sometimes children may have said, but in that other language, Mama, make a bowl with pictures of big animals for me, big fierce creatures that I'll hunt someday. So she drew mountain lions and wildcats and even a man wrestling a bear. Or is it a bear wrestling a man? Many a child must have eaten rabbit stew for supper out of bowls with rabbits painted on them. Here's a hunter who used a fine, long net for catching rabbits, but what rabbit couldn't jump through that hole in the dish? Indians who find this pottery today that everything has its own spirit, even a broken pot. They say the clay remembers the hands that made it. Does it remember the cornfields too? And the summer rains, and the ceremonies that held life together? Here are the masks and the costumes and the great dancing figures. Here is the flute player bent low over his song. Songs had to be powerful enough to make rain fall and winds blow and seeds sprout in the dark earth. Songs had to be powerful enough to keep warriors safe and lead the hunter to the deer and make summer always follow winter and hold the sun in its proper path across the sky, and keep life moving on from tribe to tribe. They say that even now the wind sometimes finds one of those songs still in the clay and lifts it out and carries it down the canyon and across the hills. It is a small sound and always far away, but they say sometimes they hear it. Designs used in this book are all derived from prehistoric Indian pottery from the American Southwest. The original artwork was done by ancient potters of the Anasazi, Mogollon, Hohokam, and Mingres cultures.
Our last song today. Can you back down the mic just a smidge for mic 3? Thank you. Our last song today is going to be new to everybody in the room except for Celeste, who found it, and I'm very grateful for it. And I will say that I was told once about music, something that has stuck with me, and that's don't form an opinion about a song until you've sung it 3 or 4 times, or don't. It was told to me actually about opera. And it makes particular fitting there. But for context, when the Teal hymnal was new, this congregation was really skeptical about all those new songs like Blue Boat Home. And, like, oh my gosh, that's just so weird. So with that spirit, open-hearted spirit in mind, please rise and sing the song. It's a verse-chorus song, so if you can catch the chorus by the 3rd time round, that'd be great. And do your best. So many friends who've had to say goodbye, so many broken hearts stuck open wide. The sadness flows like rivers deep inside. We need each other in these trying times. So circle round each other side by side, and may we heal these wounds together, bringing love to heal the pain. We know we will not love forever, so what kind of world will we build today? Repeat that. So what kind of world will we build today? So many living under fear and strife, so much injustice that must face the light. The anger burns like fire deep inside. We need each other for the long haul fight. So circle round each other side by side, and may we heal these wounds together, bringing love to hold the pain. We know we will not live forever, so what kind of world will we build today? Repeat the last line. So what kind of world will we build today? Nobody knows just what the future holds, but if we try to live our principles, a loving world is more than possible. And though we have a long, long ways to go, we'll circle round each other and we'll grow. And may we heal these wounds
Our chalice extinguishing will be read by Mary Catherine. We'll read the Spanish first. She's going to read the Spanish in phrases to us, and then we will repeat it back, and then we'll read the second verse in English, or same verse, but in English all together. I wanted to say that, of course, by reading and singing in Spanish, we not only are extending a welcome to people whose primary language is Spanish and who may be newcomers to Tucson, but we are also honoring Tucson's past.
Okay, I'll say part of a sentence and you repeat it. The font is bigger. Is it on? It's on. It's just... there. Okay, all right. Okay. Este es el mensaje de nuestra fe. Actuar con pasión frente a la injusticia. Amar con valentía. En medio del dolor de la vida. En medio del dolor de la vida. Este es el significado de la llama de nuestra cáliz. Que empodere nuestro corazón. Que empodere nuestro corazón hasta que estemos juntos otra vez. Hasta que estemos.
And now all together. This is the message of our faith, to act with passion in the face of injustice, to love with courage in the midst of life's pain. This is the meaning of our chalice flame. May it empower our hearts until we are together again.